I don't know.
Yeah, no, I very much resonate with that. I try and line things up so that when I sit down to start my day, or when I try to organize my breaks so that when I sit down after taking a break or on a fresh day, I get to do fun stuff. I'll try to typically do my mix prep later at night after I've had a day kind of going, so that, I'm just organizing, listening, editing vocals, whatever, just kind of tightening things up. Like, I like to do that at the end of the day from a different, like if I'm about to start a new song the next day, I'll try and get the mix prep done the night before, so that when I sit down, everything's prepped on a fresh day, just start working on the track from there. That's always most inspiring. Or, I'll just try and line up tasks with my breaks so that when I come back feeling refreshed, I don't have to do the tedious stuff that will burn me out quicker. The inspiration is what keeps you going.
Are you using a mix template when you get into it?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Finding that a mix template helps a lot more. It's just easier to keep things going, keep things organized. And I don't necessarily have plugins on my template. Like, maybe a couple groups will have some plugins that I typically like to use, but just for routing and organization, so when I get stems, because most of the time I get stems, like it's very rare that I'll get a Pro Tools session and work from there. Most people like to send me stems, which is great. A lot nicer on the DSP too. But yeah,
Absolutely.
so just being able to import stems into the template and then start going from there, I find is very efficient.
Yeah, nice. Do you do anything specific that you think helps you work a bit faster other than templates? Like, do you have any secret karate punches or whatever?
I don't believe in secrets. Honestly, I think, everyone's going to do something their own way and they're going to hear it differently. So I really don't believe in like keeping a method that works for you sacred or privatized to you, because
Yeah, I'm not saying like secret. Like,
but I feel what you're saying.
Something...
I feel what you're saying, but I just felt like I had to say that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think most importantly, I think it's just like listening to the reference and making sure I understand what's trying to be portrayed and what we're trying to focus on, and developing a sense of like what I think I can improve. And
when you say reference, you mean the rough mix?
The rough mix, yes. It's funny because the more and more I'm mixing production style music, I'm noticing that the reference, it's not even a rough mix. It's a mix. Like, the producer has mixed the song to the best of their ability 90% of the time. So I find it's like really important to identify what is vibing in that mix and what we need to maintain and what could be improved. So I think that's the most important method to me, is just being like, okay, where are we sitting here? What am I really trying to do to this song? And besides that, it's a good question. I think just trying to find the right balance, because it's so important. I mean, I find that it's easier to get a song cooperating if the balance is correct. Because if the balance isn't right and then you start messing with elements of the song, you're actually pushing yourself farther away from where it needs to be.
Interesting.
Yeah, I used to be the person who would just start introducing tracks one at a time into the mix until I felt the balance was right. And if I came across a sound that I didn't like, I would process it there on the spot without, and it was partially out of context. I wouldn't like process things in solo and start messing with stuff. But like, as I'm introducing elements into the mix, if something didn't feel right, I would fix it there. When I feel like now I'm more so listening, trying to get the balance there as a whole and making sure that the balance is in line with the reference mix first. And then from there being like, okay, what don't I like about this? Okay, the way the kick and the bass are hitting, they're not necessarily working together. Maybe then I'll start adjusting some EQ or harmonics or sonically adjusting things from there. But I just want to try and make sure that I'm doing things with the right in the right context.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great takeaway for the listeners.
Nice.
Just like hearing the whole song and kind of like, when you're talking about listening to the rough mix and just like getting in the brain of the producer, like what are they trying to accomplish? And
right.
I think you nailed it. You know, that's like you hit the nail on the head.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Yeah. And most of the time it's like just adding that extra 10 to 15%. You know what I mean? Most of the time the rough mix already sounds great. And it's like, okay, cool. What are we going to do to make this just that much better without changing it?
Yeah. I'll often find like if I'm mixing a producer's like track and I'm hearing their rough mix and I'll just like flip to mine. Usually the low end sounds a little bit more full. It's a little bit less muddy. It's a little bit more open. Like you kind of like flip between the two and you can kind of just hear that like you've just kind of polished it a bit further, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know if you're ready to do this, but I have this new segment of the show that I wanna try to start and maybe see if it goes anywhere.
Totally.
Are you down?
I'm down.
Okay.
Let's hit it.
So basically, this is a new idea that I kind of came up with a friend of mine who kind of put the idea in my mind, is to kind of like have every guest choose like an archetypical track that they've worked on, and we'll kind of dissect it in about 5 minutes and just see what the journey it was to get to that product. Whatever it was, you know, some guests are producers, some guests are mixers, whatever it is that they're doing. So before we jumped on this call, Chris sent me a bunch of tracks, and there was a track he sent me called A Year Ago Today by an artist called Cinde, and it was really cool mix. So I figured let's jump into it. Here's a brief clip from that song, and afterwards we'll jump into the dissection.
A year ago today, you threw my love away. You held it in your hand. You had me right there. You put me in my place. A year ago today, I can't believe I said I'd wait for you. I knew you weren't ready. It's funny how things change for you. When I play it back and I see it like that, I let lust and nostalgia keep me in the past, and you're moving on just like that. Fuck. Why would you string me along if this wasn't love? Did you get what you want? Yeah. And I hear you in every song. I'm still trying to fight you. I still can't deny you. A year ago today, I put in some labor, but baby,
Awesome. Really cool track. Tell me about what the track was like when it first fell into your lap.
Well, this is a great example of a track that already sounded really good coming across my plate. It's produced by a friend of mine named Mike Tompa, who is an amazing instrumentalist, you know, guitar player, keyboard player. He plays multiple variety of strings and crafted an amazing string arrangement. All the strings you hear on that song are acoustic strings. And
Wow.
that was a real treat getting to work on those recordings. So Mike's a great producer, engineer, mixer as well. Who he still mixes a lot of his stuff too, but he's trying to once again focus on producing. So he's been tossing me some stuff to mix for him, which has been really fun. So yeah, once again, the track was in a really great place when I got it. So I gave it some listens and realized, okay, like what do I want to do to improve? I definitely wanted to kind of tighten up the low end a bit. I felt I needed to introduce a little more body to the vocals so they can have a little bit more real estate in the mix. And I really loved what was going on with the strings. I think that he really nailed just like the way they sounded. So I just wanted to maintain that and really give the chorus more of a dynamic. I mean, the chorus already explodes because there's so many new production elements that get introduced at that section of the song. So it was more so just like staging it in a way where it just didn't feel like just more elements were being introduced. Like I wanted to try and make it bloom. So,
Like a dynamic thing.
yeah, and imaging, you know, I just wanted to just kind of like open up. So that was my focus on that. And, if I recall, the first thing I was focusing on were the vocals, because most of the time when I get stems from producers, they're already like pre-blended. Like most of the time when I get stems and I import them into a session, the blend is there for the most part, maybe a couple elements.
Really?
Yeah, which is
so the producer is just like mixing the vocals and you get their vocal mix.
I mean,
balance, I guess.
Balance wise, and sometimes sonics too,
yeah.
depending on what's going on. I'll definitely request dry vocals and wet vocals. 90% of the time I'm gonna start the lead vocal from the dry vocal, but sometimes
the wet vocal gives you a reference.
The wet vocal gives me a reference on what's going on, yes, but also sometimes the wet vocal just sounds really good and the vibe is there already and I just don't need to like work backwards, but I'm finding that most of the time the things that I'm finding that I can improve is like the overall tonality of the vocals. So I like to start from the dries on there just to kind of build the stages of compression in my own way, not necessarily better or worse, just in my own way that works for me. So yeah, with that song, I popped the stems in and everything was feeling good balance wise, so that it gave me enough of a foundation to be able to start working on the vocals and having a proper reference point, just knowing that, okay, things are cooperating the way they should. So let's dive into what I felt needed the most attention. So I started with the vocals. There's a beautiful arrangement of backing vocals and just trying to find their space and the place that they needed to be was cool. Actually, I do recall that on this song, I didn't get any wet vocals. Everything was dry. So that's why I needed to focus on them. I'm remembering now. Yeah, so everything was dry. So I kind of had to listen to the ref a little bit, figure out what kind of vibes and what kind of dimensions they had in mind and recreate that with my own effects. So yeah, that's what the majority of the first phase of the mix was, just really getting the vocal mix feeling good. And I've listened to a bunch of other podcasts where some mix engineers will say that they'll mute the instrumental and just work on the vocals for a bit to just make sure that they're all, behaving with each other and getting along in a harmonious way. So I did that at first, kind of just like getting the lead dialed and placing the harmonies and layers the way I thought would be appropriate. And then from there, start introducing elements and seeing what would be clashing. And then instead of fixing the vocals to fit in the instrumental, adjusting the instrumental to accommodate the vocals. Right. Which worked well in this. I originally on my first mix, I recall that I went a little too crazy on the effects and, that was not the direction. So I had to dial back some of the effects and adjust some things, but just some minor, it was mostly just like dialing back the reverbs that I had and giving a little bit more intimacy was what the track was going for. So after catching that little hiccup, things went really smoothly. Just trying to fill out the low end in terms of like the bass drum and the bass elements, because there's a bunch of different bass elements throughout that song. That was probably the next focus, and yeah, just making sure that the environment for the strings was lush, because I just loved the way they sounded, and I didn't want to just give it back exactly the way they sounded, but I definitely wanted to keep all the great elements and just give it a little bit more sauce. So by
sauce you mean like reverb, or you mean like
I think if I recall
saturation?
You know what? It wasn't saturation nor compression, because I love the way the dynamics of them were behaving with each other. It was more so just like atmosphere. Like I think I introduced some capital chambers reverb. I think that's what I used to just like give them a little bit more space. And I don't know if you've messed with that plugin, but it's got so many different options to create the room. It's amazing. So
I've heard great things about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
I just already have so many reverb plugins that I can't justify a purchase.
Yeah, I know. I feel you. And it's not a cheap one, but I am finding that reverbs are one of those things where it's crazy as it sounds, you can never have enough options for reverb. Some people like to,
that's true.
Some people like to stick to their go-tos, and that's cool. I definitely,
I have a few go-tos, but sometimes you really need to, when you're looking for a reverb, you can like go down the rabbit hole, because you're just looking for a specific sound, and until you find it, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah. What I like to do is kind of like, check out different plugins and then identify what I like best about those plugins. And then when I'm searching for a reverb sound, I'll be like,